Hey folks, welcome back. So we have Fernando, who is from Berkeley, and he's going to talk through one of the biggest shifts in economics. For a long time, economics was a laggard in terms of this, in terms of reproducibility. I can say that because my PhD is in economics, and Fernando's going to tell us all about the social sciences reproducibility platform, which has really pushed economics to where it needs to be. So thank you very much, Fernando.
Thank you very much, Rohan, for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here. And so let me share my screen. And is it a 30-minute talk with interruptions? I'm okay, or I can talk less and leave some time for the end.
Yeah, 30 minutes is great. And folks usually aren't interrupting too much. Okay. We'll normally try and leave the questions to the end.
Okay, great. So let me set things up here. Okay. Right. So thank you. I'm going to be talking here today about our large project about accelerating computational reproducibility in the social sciences overall. We did start with economics, and it still it's heavily influenced our thinking in terms of the reforms that have happened in economics recently. But we do also want to. We think that many of the tools that we have developed here are applicable to social sciences in general. And the main output of this initiative has been the social science reproduction platform. So this initiative, it's part of BITS, which is the Berkeley Initiative for Transparency Social Sciences. We basically promote transparency, reproducibility, and rigor in research and policy analysis. We're also part of the larger Center for Effective and Global Action. This is the core people in this group, in ACRE. The PIs are Ted Miguel and Lars Hoover, and there has been a lot of great people involved in this project so far. This is a conference on reproduction, so probably I will not talk much about this motivation, but basically there is an interest in improving both the replicability and the reproducibility of science. So in replicability, understood as same method over a different but comparable sample. The rates have fluctuated between 30 to 60%. Reproducibility, which I think everybody here's on board with the same definition, is basically same data, same methods, same code, hopefully getting same results. The rates here we should aspire to get 100%, and we're not close to that. Here it's not clear that we should aspire to get 100%. So this is the so-called reproducibility crisis. But not much to delve, no need to delve much in that for this audience. The second, and I am curious, like how many times in this conference people have cited the Declarable Principle, but this is Declarable Principle in writing. But the mimified version of it, I like it more, which is basically the manuscript. It's not the key scholarly output. We should think of the manuscript of a study as advertisement primarily, and the entire iceberg, the entire scholarly output should be the whole computational environment, right? So this is something that was outlined by Darboux 1995, and it's used a lot to motivate the importance of computational reproducibility. And the main focus is that accessing the entire iceberg, the entire body of knowledge, helps with pedagogy and incremental generation of knowledge. But one motivation for us also, we believe or suspect that it also might have a positive effect on diversity, equity, and inclusion, in the sense that until now, you do need some type of connections, some type of credentials, some type of language skills to access data. So you need to know how to craft an email requesting, if please, can you give me access to a certain given data set? And those are barriers that affects more marginalized or underrepresented populations, and increasing computational reproducibility would increase access of different groups. The third motivation for computational reproducibility for us is this idea of preventing the loss of knowledge. If you have done a PhD and taking some applied course in empirical applied could be economics, but could be psychology, sociology, political science. You might have faced this type of assignment where you have to reproduce the results of a paper and possibly test the robustness of its results. And you go through, each semester, students will go through an exercise that is something like this. First, they're gonna verify if data exists. Just verifying that data exists is a way of generating knowledge, saying to the world, I found the data, I found the code, I did not find the data, I did not find the code. That is important. Assess it. So did the thing run? Did it give you the same results? How far away were you? What are the results? Again, the student is generating knowledge. The reproducer is generating knowledge. Doesn't need to be only a student. They might improve it also. They might fix paths, download the proper libraries, automate that process, add missing files, rewrite the entire code in an open source or in another programming language. Again, more generation of knowledge. And they might test the robustness of results, and they might find that the results do not vary much to additional robustness tests that they were not specified in the paper or in the appendix. Again, all this is knowledge. All this does not fit so well in a paper. So at the end of the semester, this is at best a presentation or a report, but it's not standardized. It's not collected systematically anywhere, and moreover, the lack of standardization of language of how we talk about this exercise varies widely across universities, disciplines, you name it. So that poses a challenge. And there are some previous attempts to record this type of important knowledge, but they focus much more on generating a paper. And again, a paper might be worth writing when you find something wrong with the results, or where you want to extend the robustness checks to some new type of methodology or something like that. But for this type of standardized exercise where students are generating knowledge, there are not that many incentives to record it. There was no place to record that knowledge. And as a result, we lose all this knowledge every semester. Hundreds of students around the world are generating knowledge, and it evaporates because of a lack of a platform, or lack of a place to record this. So that's the context for for this initiative, and a little bit of historical context. I'm gonna go fast here because probably Lars is gonna talk more about it tomorrow, but basically the landscape in terms of reproducibility has changed drastically. The first policy that was enacted in the American Economic Association, the AEA, in 2006, already was an improvement from nothing, but it was just asking, please post some data, and I will give you a waiver whenever you ask for it. Starting in 2019, a radical change took place, led by the new data editor, Lars Hoover. Now you're required to post all data. Publication is conditional on verifying reproducibility. Now, starting in 2020, you're required to post all cleaning code, regardless of whether you are working with confidential data or not. So with that context, we would expect that 2019, 2020, 2022, I don't know, whatever the backlog of papers are in the AEA, in the future, we should expect higher levels of computational reproducibility. But that also means that we should not demand 100% reproducibility before. So there's space to identifying gaps and try to improve the reproducibility of previously published work, or work that is either in the pipeline right now or in other journals. But we do have a different philosophy in our approach that I think distinguishes from other work in this space. We do not want to qualify our reproduction as a successful or failure. We want to move away from binary assessments. We do know that there are a lot of incentives that push people here to get into an adversarial type of exchange. So we do not want to say paper X is reproducible or not. We want to say result Y in paper X has a high or low level of reproducibility according to several reproduction attempts. Moreover, improvements have been made, increasing its reproducibility to a higher level. That's the kind of thing that we're gonna try to encourage and track in the platform. So how do we go about that? We break the paper. Any paper that goes into a platform, we break it into subcomponents following the approach that it's being proposed by the SCORE group at the Center for Open Science. Basically, we focus not on the paper, we focus on the claims of the paper. Claims here are the main findings. So a paper might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, N claims, the main findings of the paper. And each claim is gonna be supported by some type of evidence presented in a display item. That could be a table, could be a figure, could be a inline result. And each of those are going to have several specifications or several alternatives. And one of those specifications is going to be the main evidence that supports the claim. And we want to guide the reproducer in identifying that, pre-specifying it, and then going through with the reproduction. A lot of this exercise, and this I'm happy to talk more also, is about standardization. Basically, this is just a subset of the terms that we needed to make some type of arbitrary decisions as to what they mean. I'm just here highlighting some. We are heavily committed with the term reproduction and not replication, and because it is confusing. Things like reproduction package, what is raw data, how do you define it, analysis data. There are papers that they might not have any information, so those would be candidate papers that we need to abandon because there's no work to be done. And once you move forward on a paper, you need to declare a paper. But those are these examples of definitions that you would find in the platform. And this is the platform. So this is, if you go to social science reproduction, I forgot to put the slides in the chat, so I'll put them here. If you go to the social science reproduction platform, you will find this, and if you do a blank search here, it will show you all the papers that have been, all the reproductions that have been taking place so far. But as if you go to a platform and start a reproduction, just let me walk you through the process of what would happen. Again, it's broken into these stages. First, you're gonna select a paper. Selecting a paper basically entails to identifying that the paper is somewhere and has a stable identifier, a digital object identifier. This would be a URL that it's stable, that all journals will assign you one, and even for some working paper series, they will assign you one. And also verify if there are any type of reproduction package, any type of materials. So in this case, for this paper, we can see that we do have a DOI and we do have some type of reproduction package. At this point, you as a reproducer should not be thinking even at reading the paper, not investing any time. We're just verifying these materials exist. If they do, you move on. If they don't, you can leave a record, and that again, you are generating knowledge, knowing that a paper has no materials. There is no systematic way of capturing that, and now you as a reproducer could contribute to identifying that. So in this case, there is a DOI, there is a reproduction package, you move on, and then you move to a stage of scoping. So scoping here, you would identify what are the main claims. This is a subjective exercise, but we do guide reproducers in sort of like identifying the main pieces of a claim, whether it's causal, whether it's descriptive or predictive. And typically you would find a claim either in the abstract or in the introduction, but sometimes it might be buried somewhere. So in this case, it's in the results. And here, my subjective interpretation is that here is the main claim. And after identifying that, you will find the display item that contains the evidence that supports this claim. You might find other specifications that you might want to keep track of. And then you go to the platform and record in your words what is the claim. And with some guidance from us, one sentence or so saying what was the main finding, and then you record the claim, what was that number, the 0.169 that was there. So once you have go through like this tree and identify the branch that you want to focus on, you would go and start the assessment. And for the assessment, you go open the SIG file or the materials and find a lot of stuff in there, right? So if you are lucky, you might find a README file that walks you through the steps, hopefully, but you might not. But in this case, you when checking this README file, remember here you're targeting table 2 from here. This is table 2, the one. This is the target. The specific part is that 0.169. But then you go and okay, if you want to reproduce table 2, you would record all the inputs and outputs that go into generating table 2. In this case, the README will tell you that this is the key file that you're looking for. And when you start inspecting that file, you'll find a lot of inputs and outputs. There are all these things I'm highlighting here. And again, as this thing gets more and more complicated, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. And one nice feature of the platform is that it has a feature that generates this thing that we call a reproduction tree, which basically you tell for any script what are all the inputs and outputs. And it will say, okay, given that these are all the outputs that go into this file, and then they go into this script that generate finally this result. Not all reproduction trees are going to be so clean. It might be messy, but even identifying a messy tree might be already a contribution, and amending that tree also could be a contribution. And once you have identified all the pieces, you're going to try to run it. You're going to see the result, and you're going to see, okay, is this thing reproducible or not? And again, we don't want to say use a binary assessments. So we propose these levels that go from no materials at all to reproducible from the raw data. And the intermediate key parts are being able to reproduce from analysis data. So computationally reproducible from analysis data. And finally, computational reproducible from raw data. And these P and C are partial and complete, denoting partial analysis data, partial raw data, complete components, yes or no. And that would be the assessment. So this, again, you have assessed a piece of the paper, but also you might do some improvements, and we want to record that. We want to give you credit for that. So there could be improvements at the paper level. There could be improvements at the display item level, or you also might not have any time, but you might have developed a in-depth knowledge about the plot, about a given paper, and you might want to suggest future reproducers that come after you what might be done. So, for example, paper level improvements, you can just set it up, say like give a repository for the reproduction package if it doesn't have one. You can improve the documentation, comments, indentation, etc. You can do reorganization of files, like what the tier group suggests. Follow the AA template. There are lots of paper level improvements. There are also display item improvements, and these are just examples from our previous pilots. Some students have found raw data and added to the package that was missing. Some students have generated the analytic data files and put them in the proper place. Some might have cleaned the code. Some might have found a typo or a mistake and fix it. And again, leaving a record of it. These are examples of future possible improvements. And again, as you see, as you progress through steps, you are generating knowledge, and the platform, what it's doing is recording that knowledge. And the final step is going to be the process of checking for robustness. And here, there are two types of things that you can do. One, you could increase the size of feasible robustness checks just by identifying where are analytical choices in the reproduction package. This anybody without any specific substantive knowledge can do this. is just about like identifying or judging what are analytical choices in a code. The next step is to justifying that this robustness check is reasonable. And here we're following the Simon-Sonarol definition that a reasonable test is a sensible test that is expected to be statistically valid and non-redundant with other tests. So for this, you need much more in-depth knowledge or expertise in a specific subject area. So there could be two types of contributions. Again, one, increasing the size of the feasible set. A second one could be testing a specific robustness check and justifying it. And both are valuable. And the platform allows you to do both. And also, the more reproducible a package it is, the more reproducible a paper it is, the more you will be able to test for robustness, right? So as you level 1, there's nothing to reproduce, so the feasible set is empty. Level 10, you can reproduce everything and probably more than the paper. So that's just the connection between the levels and the reproducibility assessment. And once you're done with this, you're done with the reproduction. And it's basically going to generate this nice little summary that is going to have the name of the paper, the name of the reproducer. It's going to have very important a DOI of the reproduction, not only of the paper, but now the reproduction has become an artifact that has a DOI, a digital object identifier attached to it, that it can be cited. You can put it in your CV. You can use it to apply for jobs, to grad school. Basically, you can use it as a way of showing the knowledge that you have generated and the work that you have done. In this summary, it would show basically how many claims have you assessed, how many improvements have you done any robustness checks. Here's just going to summarize your claim as you have identified it. And this is going to be the display item with the score that you will have assigned and with a link to the original reproduction package and your revised reproduction package. And down here, it's going to have an entire view-only version of the reproduction attempt. So as you go through the reproduction, you would have created all these pieces of knowledge that now it's going to be accessible in a standardized way for people to see. Who's going to want to see this? Basically, you might want to share with the original authors. You might want to share with your instructor, with other researchers. You might want to add it to your CV. We have a forum where we encourage people to discuss in a constructive way this exercise, and also hopefully we do have the DOI now. So and you can cite it now. It's a citable object, and throughout this exercise, it's important to emphasize that we want to promote a constructive exchange. We know that this thing can get adversarial pretty quickly. So we have also provided a template language on how to navigate potentially thorny exchanges. So here are just 7 examples of how the reproducer might approach the authors. Here's just a template email when their reproducer finds that there's no reproduction package and they want to follow up. Here we're just telling them, okay, send them this email and change the proper fields. And again, emphasizing constructiveness. Unfortunately, I was not able to locate the materials, even though I look in the website, the Dataverse, etc. I will record this in the Acre. Also, if you share materials with me and with your permission, I will share with the world. Please let me know if there are any restrictions. Thank you for your cooperation, and please note that you're not required to comply. So it's trying to navigate this in a constructive way. Here's another one when there might not be materials, you're following up on some missing materials, and we try to emphasize to show that you have done the work, show that you have looked at the reproduction package, and here you can use the reproduction tree to show I have looked and I see that this file is required, and this file, even though I can see it in the scripts, it's not there. So you're showing the authors that you have done the work, that you have that you're not just like gratuitously like trashing their work. So how would you go about getting started with this? You can use it as a as a student and in one of these courses, also as an undergraduate thesis. You can use it to like review the reproducibility of your own work, to track it. You can use it as a journal editor to also monitor what the submissions that you have received. We are working in streamlining that process a little bit more. You can also use it to report on reproductions of others. Throughout the platform, we have developed this guide. If you go there, you will see the guides, which are basically a book that has one chapter per stage, but has other chapters on useful things like this constructive language thing that I was telling you, or examples of trees, or all sorts of other things. That will provide you details on how to go through these different stages, both for students and for instructors. And also we have the forum where you can ask questions about how to approach different things and how to reproductions per paper. Yep. Hello?
We just lost you there for a minute. Sorry, not a minute, for just 30 seconds, Fernando, but you're back now. So.
Okay. So I was talking about who's using this. 62 reproductions so far, corresponding to 60 papers. This is just a summary of the levels. All sorts of people are using these: faculty, graduate students, undergraduates. There are a lot of in-progress reproductions right now. And even these abandoned reproductions are useful because there are exercises where somebody went to look for a paper for materials and did not find anything. So that's where we are right now. We want more people to use this. We think that it fills in a concrete gap, and it hopefully will help to accelerate the reproducibility of social sciences in general. So if you want to use this, or if you have any questions, feel free to contact us, and we're happy to talk more.
Thanks so much, Fernando. As I said, this is just it's a great initiative. Do folks have questions or comments?
I have a question. Thanks for a great talk, Fernando. That was super interesting. I missed the first part of your talk, so I apologize if this was addressed. But could you talk a little bit about the differences and overlap between this initiative and like the SCORE reproductions led by the Center for Open Science?
Yeah. So what the SCORE reproduction is doing right now, it has definitely an overlap in the sense that they are taking, I think it's 3,000 papers for the social sciences in general. Of that, they selected like a subset of 600 papers randomly, and of those, an unclear fraction is going to be reproduced, and another fraction is going to be replicated. And we see this effort as basically helping to complement the reproduction part. We are not touching the replication attempts or anything like that. And we do try to follow a similar structure or taxonomy, in the sense that we purposely define the attempts of focusing on claims as opposed to focusing on the paper overall, both because we think it's more constructive, but also because it follows the taxonomy that the SCORE group is conducting. So I think short answer, they're going to reproduce a unknown subset of 600, and we are going to hopefully complement that and do more.
Great. And if there are papers that are both reproduced by you and by them, is it going to be integrated at all?
we're talking about that. So hopefully the answer is yes, but we're trying to basically figure out how to integrate both. Yeah.
Great. If that's okay, I have one more question. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the incentives. So you mentioned that the reproduction gets a DOI, so people can put it on their CV, et cetera. What are your other thoughts on how to incentivize people for doing this and what they get out of it?
Yeah. So the main incentive so far we have right now is to make it as easy as possible for the instructors to use it in their course. So again, this is something that it is already done. We're just making it slightly easier for them to adopt it in their course. But we do want to do some type of competition or offer prizes. That's contingent on grants that we're applying and things that might or might not work out. But we would like to basically provide some additional monetary incentives or some type of prize for number of reproductions. One feature that is upcoming is that we also wanna develop a little bit more of a like reproducer profile, so people can have like something similar to Stack Overflow, where you can show like how many answers you have provided and how many things you have participated in this community. You can show how many reproductions have you done and like how much improvement have you provided to things. So that's another space where we hope it might play a role.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? I'll just get started while maybe other folks are thinking about things. But please, if anyone has any questions, just like raise your hand or I'm calling you. So one of my issues was it's kind of hard to find papers unless you stick with AEA journals since like 2019, right? So I tried to broaden that to other social sciences, but I couldn't find like a comprehensive, collection of papers from sociology or political science. There wasn't something that you could point students to. Do you think that you would ever like create collections of like, hey, if you go to these ones for political analysis since 2020, like this will be fine, or you don't see the platform in that way? Oh, and then Eric after me.
Yeah. So in the guides, we have some suggested guidelines on how to find papers. And it's pretty rudimentary. It's basically go to Google Scholar, identify the top 10 journals per discipline, then go into each discipline and identify the paper that you would like to search for. And again, you might find a ton of papers that have nothing, but that's helpful information. So it's there might be a lot of repetition in like no reproduction materials whatsoever, but that's going to be valuable. And there's also going to be a gradient. I think there's even looking at the AEA example, there's going to be with this rule that was instated in 2006. You're going to have a ton of papers that have some materials, but it's going to be probably like a data set that says like X, Y, and the has like regress X and Y. But again, assessing that, it's valuable information. So yeah. Eric.
Yeah, so I have one question. You mentioned that sometimes it can get adversarial in reproduction attempts, and trying to build up a community of people who sort of maybe specialize in this for their grad school applications or whatever. Do you worry that not all of these students are going to understand that they are not universally looked upon with fond eyes by the profession?
Yes, yeah. So one additional feature that I forgot to highlight is that the reproducers will have the option to remain anonymous for up to 4 years after completing the reproduction. So if things get adversarial and they don't feel comfortable with the results, they will have the option to submit an anonymous reproduction. After each year, actually, they will be required to confirm they want to continue anonymous, and after 4 years, it will become public. We think 4 was a nice compromise because we want this thing to drag forever, but at the same time, we want to allow people to apply to grad school, to apply for academic positions, or all sorts of other things. So yeah, in that sense, we are very sensitive of that potential backlash, and we do think that again the platform provides a standardized solution to what another approach could be: just don't do the reproductions, don't touch the thing with a 10-foot pole, or do it but stay quiet, kind of thing. This is a bit of a middle point that tries to provide a space for people to still do that valuable work and help them navigate potential complications.
Richard.
Hi, Rohan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the great talk. I was following on YouTube before I joined on Zoom. I had a question about the levels of computational reproducibility that your team has in the guide. I was wondering what would be the, let's say, what would be your assessment of a paper where the code doesn't really match the description in the paper, but it perfectly reproduces every table that's in the paper and every figure. So it doesn't, because I don't really see that discrepancy between the code and the description in the paper accounted for the level.
So here the paper says we run a linear predictive model, and the code runs a logic kind of thing, but it reproduces the final table. Is that?
Well, you add that, or the paper says we include certain variables, but the code includes other variables.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So we're focusing on whether or not it reproduces the display item. So in that case, that would be if it checks all the boxes, it could achieve level 10.
Yeah, but then there's a serious problem in the.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it would. There are still places in the platform where you can report that. There's not a standardized place where you can report that. But it's a great comment. I think I'll think about how to.
I think there could be a way to incorporate that.
Where we can allow for reproducers to report that.
The second question. The second question is that sometimes the paper would provide the data files in a CSV file, and so you could technically you could reproduce all the results that they had, but sometimes you're not able to see how they constructed their key variables. And so the paper is reproducible, but I could also argue that it's not, in the sense like it's not truly reproducible.
Yeah. So that's what in our levels we will score that as reproducible from the analysis data. And again, distinguishing between analysis and raw data, there's going to be a fair amount of subjectivity, but if you have the final variables and just the statistical test that you're running at the end, that will have a degree of reproducibility, but it would not be reproducible from raw data, and that's how we try to distinguish it in the platform.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
By way of background, Wishdan went through the course that I teach where we do this last year, before we introduced the aspect of the platform. So it's all much more organized now, Wishdan, compared to what you have to do. Do others have questions or comments? Well, we might just say thanks once again, Fernando, for giving us an overview of the platform. Super exciting.
Thank you much, Rohan, for reminding me.
We're going to have a little bit of a break now through till 3:30. So that's if you're in Toronto. It's 3:30. If you're not in Toronto, then it's an hour and 20 minutes. There's sort of movement around the schedule. And so return at 3:30 with Carl Leflam, who's in private, is in industry, so reproducibility industry. Bob Hanish, who's at the RDA, which is focused on data, and Jan Jolly, who's at Montreal, I think. So hopefully everyone can join us this afternoon. So starting in about an hour and 20 minutes or so, but otherwise, hope everyone else has enjoyed the morning. Thanks very much.